Glad to be here. I know it's freezing back in New York, so it's very different here, and it's wonderful to see you all here. You know, as Nick said, when we were thinking about this event, we want it to be different from a lot of events out there, and the one thing that we've noticed over the years when it comes to programmatic in particular is it tends to be a lot of people talking to themselves, and all sides don't actually get together. And so we, when we were putting together the plan for this event and the plan for the content, is we wanted to hear from all sides, and we're going to do that. And so I want to do a couple things right now really quickly, which is going to walk you through just sort of the 5 big trends that we were looking at when we were putting together the agenda. And then, as a bit of an assignment for you, for what your big challenges are. But we'll get to that after the big trends. And the biggest one, and I think the one we're going to hear about again and again, is organizational challenges. Because right now, programmatic advertising is clearly taking hold. I don't think anyone's debating it. I think a few years ago, you know, we would have had like a session about like, oh, is this a bad thing for publishers and stuff like this. At this point, it's happening. And the question is, how are our organizations going to adapt in order to meet the challenges for it and to actually turn them into opportunities? After I'm done here, Carol Chung from Digitas is going to come up, and we're going to talk a little bit about how Digitas is doing this. You know, we have Turner here to talk about how they're adapting to it, and it's going to be a thread, I think, from in all of the conversations we end up having here. And the next one is addressing transparency, because, you know, we all hear about how complicated programmatic advertising is, and it still is. We're sort of counting down to where when Terry's slide pops up here. It will happen, I say, by the time today ends. But it's mostly just like a symbol that, you know, this is a very complex area. It's one that is dynamic and it keeps growing. But it also leads to a lot of opacity. And it's sort of ironic because programmatic advertising was supposed to take the sort of opaqueness of the ad network era out. But basically, we found that it's still fairly opaque. And when it comes to transparency, it means a lot of different things to different people, and it really depends on who is speaking. I'm sort of reminded of, you know, when Donald Rumsfeld said there was known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. So I guess now we have, you know, you can be transparently transparent, you can be transparently untransparent, and then as the worst, you can be untransparently untransparent. So hopefully that's clear. The next one, and it's sort of related, and that's eradicating fraud. This obviously gets a ton of attention. I'm reminded a little bit of, you know, back when paid search was really taking off, and click fraud was the big thing everyone wanted to talk about. And of course, this was pushed by click fraud vendors. But you know, the big thing about click fraud was that it sort of went to the trust of the system. And I think when it comes to ad fraud, that's what it comes down to. Without addressing ad fraud, there's a possibility that there'll be an erosion of trust. So we're going to hear from Nestle Purina about how a brand views this. We're also going to have Bill Duggan from the A&A up here to talk about what they're doing to combat this, because it's a big issue with marketers. The next one is the viewability era. I mean, obviously, there's a big change afoot with viewability standards, and that's going to have a lot of effect. You know, everyone's going to, of course, say, of course, we're in favor of viewability, but really it depends on how it's implemented and how and who it will end up benefiting. I mean, ideally, it will reward, you know, people that are creating great content and draws great audiences, and therefore they get great advertisers. But there's still a lot of outstanding questions, and we're going to dig into that. And finally, it's beyond display. I think a lot of times, you know, when it comes to programmatic, we've focused mostly on display advertising, but the sort of the pipes are being laid, and it can do a lot more than just display advertising and just direct response advertising. So we're going to hear a lot about it moving into video. Obviously, it's already in mobile, and maybe even a little bit about it moving into TV. So now is the sort of my challenge for you guys, and that is there are pads of paper on all your tables, and there are a couple of Sharpies. We have 3 of these boards here, and one of the things we want is we want to move people from, as much as we can, from attendees into participants, and we want to make sure that the content sort of addresses sort of the big challenges that you end up having. So I would very much like you to take a minute and to write down on one of those pads of paper, one piece of the stickies, and put down sort of the biggest challenge you face, like when it comes to programmatic advertising, whatever your role is. Now, and then I'm going to ask you to come up here and then actually stick them up there. So if you're with a brand or agency, if you're on the buy side, just on there. And then if you're on the publisher side, put yours there, and then the technology side there. And the reason I want you to do this is because really interesting patterns emerge. And you start to see, the reason we segregate is because different parts have different challenges. So I'm going to awkwardly stare at you until you do it. But in order to make it a little less awkward, we have our special challenge music and points for whoever guesses where this is from.
Just one?
You can do 2, do 3. Any guesses? Anyone know where this is from? People's Court, that's right. Doug Llewellyn. We are both dated ourselves. Okay, we finally have a publisher challenge. Thank you. If you do want to do more than one, feel free. Feel free. Short on the publishers. Need more publishers. Some people infiltrating. Yeah. Awkward. Okay, last chance, last chance. You know, what I didn't tell you is, you know, we actually... Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I see one more coming up. I think a few of you did not participate. We actually work with a technology provider to put cookies in each of these things so we know who you are. And you will be retargeted throughout your time here until you actually do put a challenge up there. Thank you very much. We have a lot on the brand and agency side. We have a little less on the publisher side. and we have a healthy amount on the technology side. A little bit later, I'm going to go over and try to group them and try to get out some sort of, I don't know, common challenges. Believe it or not, most people complain about the same things. So thank you very much for that. That's going to actually play a very